next 15 minutes or so. So next section we're going to talk about is presuppositions of NLP. So why would you want to know the presuppositions of NLP? Why are they important? Okay, now the presuppositions are the linguistic, the presuppositions of NLP are literally the principles behind success. They're the principles behind all of the tools and techniques, all of the methodology that comes from NLP. So they're pretty important. They're kind of a set of convenient beliefs. Okay? They're kind of a set of convenient beliefs. So what's a convenient belief? Let's talk about that for a moment. I'll just switch over here. So what's a convenient belief? A convenient belief is, there's two types of beliefs in my view. So first of all, a belief is something you don't know is true, you accept to be true. Okay, so it's a belief, because otherwise it'd be a truism. So we act as if things are true, but they're really just beliefs. So there are two types of belief. There's inconvenient beliefs and there's convenient beliefs. Okay, so let's talk about the convenient beliefs first of all. So what's a convenient belief? A convenient belief is a belief that you act as if it's true, although you don't have the proof. You act as if it's true because it's actually a principle that helps you get better results. So it's convenient to believe it's true without necessarily knowing it's true. But believing it helps you to get better results, so it's a good idea. So in a similar tone, if that's a convenient belief, then an inconvenient belief is a belief that you accept as true, but you don't know is true. Thank you very much for Liam, for just noticing I hadn't hit record. So let me just hit record, and yeah, I'm recording locally, so that's good. So let's just summarize that. So presuppositions of NLP are convenient beliefs. A convenient belief is something you accept to be true without necessarily having the proof. You act as if it's true because it's more likely to help you get the results you want. Similarly, an inconvenient belief is a belief that you probably have accepted to be true, but you don't know it's true, and it actually causes you to get the wrong results, or it limits your opportunities and limits your choices. So what you want to do is you want to take on convenient beliefs that help you get good results. At the same time, you want to challenge the inconvenient beliefs that don't help you get results. And the way I like to think about it is this: instead of believing your doubts, doubt your beliefs. If you've got beliefs that don't really help you, instead of believing those doubts, doubt those beliefs. You might want to write that down. Instead of believing your doubts, doubt your beliefs, especially if they're inconvenient beliefs. And how do you know if they're inconvenient beliefs? Because they don't give you more choices. Okay? So for example, believing that, you know, we're playing the end game now and the world is finished and it's the end of everything and what's the point? That's a very bad, negative, inconvenient belief, because it doesn't give you choices about the possibilities for the future. Okay, so that's important. So these presuppositions are a set of really powerful beliefs that when you accept them to be true, knowing that you don't know if they're true or not, they're more likely to actually give you powerful results. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to run through them very quickly. There's a really good about hour-and-a-half segment in the home study where I go through each of these through a big story format. I basically do a free flow conversation, and I cover about 18 of these in about 45 minutes to an hour, and it's a really great piece to go back and review. This is the more sort of formal description of them. Okay, so let's just go through these. That's not clicking ahead. There we go. Everybody has a unique model of the world. We know that from the model of, we know that from the NLP communication model. So how people see the world is unique to their filters. Okay, so that's one of the core presuppositions. Respect other people's model of the world. The challenge that we have is we think that everybody should have the same view of the world as we do. But when you accept that everybody's unique model of the world, you don't have to agree with somebody else's model, but respect other people's model of the world for what it is, which is it's a different model to yours. Okay, so instead of saying, oh no, you're wrong, saying, okay, that's your model, that's how you see the world. I accept that because your filters are different to mine, so you've seen the world differently to me. Okay, another one, the map is not the territory. This comes from the book, what's it called? I have it up here somewhere. The Science and Sanity from Alfred Korzybski. So the map is not the territory, saying, you know, the menu is not the map. How you see the world is not how it is. It's the internal map of the world. We have a model inside our head of how we think the world is. That's called subjective reality. So what we want to do is, just because we see the world that way, it doesn't mean that's the way the world is. It's a bias more than likely. So we always want to be seeing, how do we see the world differently? How can we challenge our thinking to get a more accurate map of how the actual territory actually is? So the menu is not the meal. You see the menu, and the meal could be quite different. If the menu is really good, it will describe in very good detail what the meal is like, and when you consume the meal, it'll be very similar. But if the menu isn't a good description of the meal, you'll be disappointed. So if you're disappointed in life, then you want to get a better map. Here's a good way of knowing if you've got a good map of the world, okay? Make predictions of the future. If you've got a good map of the world and you can predict what's going to happen in the future, and it turns out to be true, you've got a really good map, okay? So one of the things you learn from understanding things like goal setting, the way we do goal setting, and understanding the filters, is that you're going to be able to predict with a much higher sense of accuracy what's going to happen in the world, in your reality, the world you know, because you've got an accurate map. So the map is not the territory, saying just because your map is wrong doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means the map is wrong and you need to get a better map, a more accurate map to show you what's actually happening in the world. So if your predictions are good, you've got a good map. If your predictions are not so good, you probably need to improve your map by asking better questions and changing your convenient beliefs. Okay? People are not their behaviors, right? This is an important one. Be careful about saying, John is and calling them a name. Okay? No, John is not an ass. John is not a fool. John is behaving like an ass. He's behaving like a fool. He's behaving like a wonderful person. People are not their behaviors. So what we do is we put identity statements on the person rather actually than questioning their behavior, because every behavior has a positive intent. And what happens is we understand the intent behind what's going on, we're more likely to understand their behaviors. Okay? The next one, the meaning of all behavior is dependent on the context it appears in. Right? This is an important one. Sometimes people have got behaviors that don't fit certain scenarios but could be perfect in another scenario. I remember Magella saying to me when Ashley was young is that Ashley never does what she's told. She just does her own thing. And, as a parent, when you've got like a 7-year-old child who's not doing what they're doing, they want to do their own thing, you might say they're a disruptive child. I remember saying, isn't she going to be a fantastic leader when she grows up? Which is like changing the context. If you don't just follow what everybody says, but you do your own thing, that's a sign of an independent person, a leader. So change the context, it changes the meaning. So the meaning of the behavior is dependent on the context it appears in. And all behavior has a positive intent. Again, these are all based around behaviors. When you look at the behavior, it might look like a negative thing. In your model of the world, in your NLP communication model, it looks negative. But what you don't know is you don't know what's going on in the person's mind. You don't have the ability to mind read what's going on in someone's mind. You might have got the wrong mind read. There may be a positive intent behind that behavior, you just don't know what it is. So you can find out the intention of the behavior rather than judging the person because of their behavior. That's a lot more powerful. The most important information about a person is how they are behaving. The reason it's the most important information is because it's what you can see. Okay? There's no point in guessing what's going on inside somebody's head. Okay? That's called a mind read. Mind reads end in disaster. You do not do mind reads. If you're mind reading the thought process going on inside someone's head, you're going to get it wrong. 99.99% of the time, you're going to get it wrong. But you can't see how they're behaving. So while the behavior, people are not their behaviors, the behavior gives you the information that you can calibrate on so you can learn more about why they're behaving that way. Okay? So we want to be able to observe people and notice subtle changes in their behavior or big changes in their behavior and be able to calibrate that and notice that, because then we can ask questions to find the intent behind that behavior. Okay? Which ties back to number 6, all behavior has a positive intent. This is an important one, especially if you're challenged by somebody doing something that is a bad behavior. You got to remember that everybody's doing the best they can with the resources available. Everybody's doing the best they can with what they can do today. The problem with people who have got stress and anxiety or conflict is that they're not very resourceful. So when people are not very resourceful, they're more likely to lash out. So if people are lashing out, they're more likely to behave in a weird way. But maybe it's because they feel trapped, they don't have any choices and they're behaving that way. So even though you might think that someone's behaving in a less than total ecological way sometimes, You got to look at what's the story of their life. There's a great phrase I heard is like, don't be jealous of other people, right? Don't be jealous of other people unless you inherit all of their experiences. And you might say, well, this person's got this and this person's got that, but they've got so many other things that's going on in their life as well, which might not be so positive. So never be jealous of somebody else because of one or two things they have. You need to be jealous of their complete life experience, but then you wouldn't be living your life, you'd be living their life. So I think it's a very good way of thinking about jealousy, or feel like you're missing out. You've had your experiences, they've had theirs, and everybody's doing the best with the resources available. Next one. There are no unresourceful people, only unresourceful states. Okay? So people sometimes will say, oh, I can't do this, or I don't know what to do, or I'm stuck. That's the words they're saying, but that's tied to the state they're in. So in order to be more resourceful, you need to be in a more resourceful state. Think about that NLP communication model again. If you look at it in reverse, from behavior back to physiology, physiology back to state, state back to internal representation. If you actually get people to move their body, to change their breathing, to be resourceful in their physiology, that affects their state. If they're in a good state, then they can be more resourceful. They can see things differently because the internal representation, the TV in their head, they're advertising more positive stuff in their mind, and they find a way through every block. Okay? There's a way through every block if you're in a good resourceful state. So if people are unresourceful, we need to figure out what they need to do to guide them to be in a better state. Okay? That's an important one. Okay? Everyone has all the resources they need to succeed and achieve their desired outcomes. They have all the resources they need to succeed and achieve their desired outcome. If someone needs an outcome and they can see themselves doing it, they have the resources to do that. They have the capabilities within themselves. They have the ability to access those states to allow them to achieve their desired outcome. Okay? One of those states is the learning state. Okay? One thing sometimes people say to me is like, I could never do that. Can you learn? Well, all learning happens at the unconscious level. So if you can, like for example, one thing that's really important to understand is because you have all the resources to succeed, it doesn't mean that you can't learn new ones as well. So you could have all the resources to know how to create a successful business, but you might not know marketing. But that's a talent stack, right? You can learn marketing. Maybe you don't know how to do public speaking. You can learn public speaking. Maybe you don't know how to use technology. You can learn technology. Learning is a state that allows you to take new talents on board. So you have all the resources to succeed and achieve your desired outcomes. What you need to do is you need to put together a plan. Okay? This is really, really important. Okay? Now, this one, I love this one. The person with the most flexibility of behavior has the greatest influence on others. Kids are great for this, you know? You see kids in a waiting room with the doctor, and the kid says to mom, can I have your phone? And the mom says, no, you can't. Mom, can I have your phone? No, you can't. Mom, can I have your phone? No, you can't. Stop behaving. Wah! Okay, here's the phone, right? Great example of kids being more flexible than parents in public, because parents get embarrassed by kids crying in public, perhaps. So what they'll do is they'll actually create a scene and they get what they want. That's a great example of flexibility of behavior. Okay. By the way, that doesn't work with my kids because they know I'll make just as big a scene as they will, and then they're embarrassed by me, and then I win. So again, what that does mean, that's about just having the flexibility of doing something different, wanting experimentation, being curious about what happens. Okay. So the same thing in your life. When you're doing what you're doing, the amount of flexibility you have determines how you get there. In other words, you can never fail. All you can do is not get there yet. That word YET is super important. So you've got different ways of doing things which allows you to take new choices, different paths, different ways, different opportunities, different strategies for actually getting the results you want. Okay? Which leads to this one, which is no failure, only feedback. See how they all lead into each other. Is that sometimes people will do something. I met a lady once who gave one amazing public talk. She gave a talk and she practiced, and she gave one talk, and then afterwards she didn't get any praise. It was a series of talks. It was like a multi-speaker event. She didn't get people coming up saying, oh, you're amazing, or anything like that. And she spoke to me about a week later and says, you know, I did this talk, but I think I failed. I don't think I'm going to be a public speaker. And I said to her, hold on a second. You did one talk in front of a group of 50 people and you think you failed, right? I've been speaking for my whole career. Since I've been in college, I used to be a lecturer in college. I've been speaking my whole career. And I've had lots of failures over those years, right? Don't just take one thing and generalize it to everything. We all make mistakes. We all have to learn. We have to improve our chances of success. And the way we do that is to access resourceful states. So there's no failure, only feedback. Take the feedback. What do you need to do differently? Do you need to get feedback from somebody else? Do you need to change what you're doing? Ask people questions and learn from the feedback. Listen to what people say and always look for ways of improving what you're doing. Okay? Everybody's in charge of their mind and therefore the results. Remember that the mind creates the emotion. The mind creates the emotion and that creates the neurotransmitter in the body. So you're in charge of your mind, therefore you can change the results you get by literally doing one thing, not believing your excuses. When you stop believing your excuses and actually believing what you can achieve, you can change how you get the results that you get. Meaning of the communication is a response you get back. This is an important one, especially for managers. When you tell somebody to do something and they don't do it, it may not be because they didn't do it, it's because you didn't communicate in a way that actually had them want to do it or could do it or didn't know how to do it. So what's really important is not what you say, it's not even what you think you said, it's what the person thought that you said. So a great way of doing this is when you ask somebody to do something, ask them to tell you what you just told them. You would be surprised. You ask somebody to do something, say, okay, just so I'm clear, could you just tell me what I've asked you to do? Now, if somebody has a particular filter called an inferential listening filter, you can learn about that in the Timeline Therapy and Basis Personality book. If someone is an inferential listener, they will infer something else by what you said. Someone who's a literal listener, they will literally understand what you said and they'll follow the instructions. So the meaning of the communication is not what you said, it's what the person interpreted what you said. And sometimes you need to clarify. This is extremely important when people say, he said, she said, but I said this. Says, no, you didn't. Yes, you did. 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 That doesn't go anywhere. Why does it not go anywhere? Because it doesn't matter what you said. It's how the person interpreted what you said. You need to clarify that. It's really one of the big ones about advanced communication. Okay. Just realized you can't see that one there. So I just dropped my little machine. So hopefully it's still working. Working? It is working. Good. Okay, next one here. The meaning of the communication response you get. Next one is resistance in the client is a sign of lack of rapport. Remember what we said at the start of the training, folks, is that one of the things that's really important is that we maintain and build rapport with people. Because if we're working with somebody in an exercise and we just feel it's just not working and we've got resistance there, that resistance is nothing to do with the client. We take responsibility for our results by saying, I'm not getting through to this person, I need more rapport. So if we feel resistance, we want to deepen the rapport so that we build that sense of connection. We build that sense of openness so they can actually feel safe and cared for in that space. And from that space, then we can help them to overcome that resistance and actually get the results they actually want. Okay, so that's the kind of the rapid fire version of, and we're actually on time. So what I want to do, guys, is I want to take a break here now, and I want to ask some questions about this. So what I'd like to do is I'd like to ask everybody to tell me what's their number one favorite presupposition, and also the presupposition that they most struggle with. Okay, what's your favorite presupposition? Why? And what's the one you most struggle with? Because here's the thing, the one that you most struggle with is probably going to be where your biggest block is. It's the one that you probably need to work on to figure out what's actually going on there.